The Philadelphia Eagles, they did it again on day 2 of the 2023 NFL Draft, selecting 2 players in round 3. Recap coming up on this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? Then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDON in the game. Gino and I are going to be recapping day 2 of the 2023 NFL Draft right here on Locked On Eagles. Philadelphia had 2 selections originally slated for pick 62 and 94. We know yesterday after the Jonathan Gannon tampering story that they moved up with Arizona from 94 to 66. Well, then, Gino, Howie Roseman said, I'm going to collect an extra 6 tomorrow, which I do not have a pick in rounds 4 through 6. I'm going to get a 6, and I'm going to get an extra 7. They now have 3 tomorrow, so they have 4 total picks on day 3. I'm going to move down just 3 spots with the Houston Texans and pick back-to-back in round 3. It's 65 and 66. What does he do with those selections? He takes Alabama offensive lineman Tyler Steen, and then, Gino, you got your safety, man. Illinois safety Sidney Brown at pick 66. Look, this isn't Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, but this is exactly what I wanted, at least. I wanted an offensive lineman and a defensive back today, and that's exactly what they did. And I think it was a great day for the Birds, also collecting picks, a trade down, and 2 positions I wanted. I'm pretty pleased.
And also they did something that I only believe has happened one time in history with Minnesota. On the NFL Network broadcast, they said that they skipped their pick, but they had back-to-back, so they really didn't matter. They just got an extended window to make the calls for their picks, which I love by Howie Roseman. I think it was a great move, Lou. I couldn't believe that they moved back 3 spots and got 3 picks.
3 picks, yeah.
They got 188, 230, and this is from @Joseph Jeffy. He has a trade pick calculator that is also on the RAS website, and the Eagles got in excess of a mid-day 3 pick. So if you're looking at it, they really technically got 4 selections out of there. If you're looking at the overall value to move back 3 spots, they get their 2 guys. Tyler Steen, he might not be known by many people, but the idea of getting a guard tackle, swing guard, versatile player was right in our wheelhouse of guys we were talking about, the Matthew Bergeron type of players. Why we were under the impression that Skoronski might be the pick because you can move him at guard and tackle. The concerns with him comes from technical, hand usage, footwork. Jeff Stoutland is going to fix that any day of the week. You know he had to sign off on that selection. Dane Brugler had him as his 7th overall offensive tackle. He was listed as a guard when Trent Cole announced the pick. I think it's a great pick, Lou. It's right up their alley. They didn't have to force one day 1. They got their pass rushers. And then to follow that up, they got my guy. They got Sidney Brown, somebody that we mocked to this team many, many times. And why was that? It wasn't just a fun name to go and pick Sidney Brown's. They need an athletic, versatile, rangy safety to take the role of what Chauncey Gardner-Johnson had last year. He's not going to be CGJ, but if you want somebody that can truly play all over the field, in their press conference, Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni harped on him being a true deep safety, that one person who can range hash to hash, truly has that downhill athleticism and downhill thumping ability. You see some of his tape. He's just blowing up blocks at the line of scrimmage. That's the type of player we've been looking for in Philadelphia. I think this is an easy bat for, somebody that could really be the heartbeat of that defensive secondary for years to come.
Well, he's what you had. Yeah, and I'm not going to say he's Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, but he's that style of safety, and they didn't have that with Terrell Edmunds or Reed Blankenship. So I think, Gino, neither prospect were the top guys at their positions that I wanted. I really like Sidney Brown. He was on my list of 10 guys that I would have wanted Philadelphia to even trade up for today. I liked Antonio Johnson maybe a little bit more from Texas A&M. There were a couple other offensive linemen, like Dawan Jones was more on my radar, some bigger names, Chandler Savala from North Carolina State. But the players are good, and I think I'm more excited just about the positions and what they filled today, right? Because, again, Steen and Brown weren't at the top of my list, but as you mentioned, Steen is a guy that can wear many hats for the short term and the future. He can be potentially a right guard this year, right? He's a interchangeable offensive lineman. He can compete with Cam Jurgens for that spot. Nick Sirianni said, may the best man win on the inside, replacing Isaac Seumalo. But also, he only gave up 2 sacks last year in front of Bryce Young at a tackle position. And the Eagles really wanted to have that swing, big V type of tackle in case Jordan Mailata goes down or Lane Johnson, because you do not want to rely on Jack Driscoll for a playoff run. So he fills some potential long-term roles at tackle, short-term at guard. And as you mentioned with Sidney Brown, this is an athlete that they needed to replace CGJ with. And from what I saw at the Senior Bowl, I didn't day, he might be the best athlete at the safety position this year, Gino. So that's exactly what I think the Eagles were looking for. And so I'm pretty happy with these 2 picks.
I can't be too disappointed at all because, at the end of the day, Jeff Stoutland signed off on this player. And I'm glad that you brought up Jack Driscoll. Yeah. Not only is he somebody that you don't want to rely on for the long term, but at the same time, he's going to be a free agent and they need to fill that position as well. And you lose Andre Dillard. Landon Dickerson is cemented at that left guard position. Cam Jurgens will more than likely be able to compete there, but you're bringing in more high quality players that played SEC minutes. It reminds me so much of that Jack Driscoll type of pick where Driscoll played guard at Auburn. He played tackle at Auburn in the SEC. That's very similar to a player in Tyler Steen. And they just continue to go back to that well, Lou. Like guys that played for good coaches, good positional coaches, and Jeff Stoutland has that connection with Alabama. So he has all the behind the scenes, how he was learning technique, how was he in the classroom. He probably got every bit of information out of Nick Saban that he could about him, all the positional coaches. And I think this is a very smart move and right up what the Eagles needed to do. And instead of having to wait to 94 potentially, and maybe you only get one of these guys, Jonathan Gannon, thankfully tampered with the Arizona Cardinals, which that Inquirer article says the Eagles are pretty upset about that whole situation that Jonathan Gannon
as they should have been, man.
All in.
I couldn't imagine hating Jonathan Gannon more, and I found a way to last night and this morning. So I'm glad at least, though, him pulling that off with Arizona allowed the Eagles to move up 28 spots to get Sidney Brown. And, I'm really excited more about the Brown pick. I wanted Steen. I shouldn't say Steen specifically, but I wanted that offensive lineman today. I thought that and a DB was my focus, but especially safety because I don't view safety, and you don't either, as running back and linebacker where it's this replaceable position, even though it's going to be a lot easier to be an Eagle safety this year as opposed to other teams because of the front 7 they have and the trio of corners. You saw the impact that a Chauncey Gardner-Johnson type of player could have last year. And I think Sidney Brown definitely has that potential. Like, yes, he's a 3rd rounder. Is he undersized and is he a inconsistent tackler right now? Sure. But the range that he can cover, the speed and the ball skills, that's what you want. It's, again, why I like the Emmanuel Forbes pick for Washington on day 1. Are there size issues, weight issues, tackling problems? Yes. But for a DB, I'd rather have your weaknesses be about the run than have it be about your athleticism and being able to cover some dangerous weapons in the open field. And Sidney Brown, that's the one thing I am not concerned about at all. And he makes, again, I liked Antonio Johnson. I like Jordan Battle, but Sidney Brown did make the most sense for what the Eagles needed at this position.
Yeah, it wasn't the redundant pick. It was the necessary pick. And yeah, back to your discussion of do you take the best player available or do you draft for need? I think that was a pretty need-worthy pick, but it was the right selection as well.
Because, again, if you're going BPA, are you taking out of Bauer and then send it? Like, no, this is, again, why you don't draft just BPA black and white, because they were not taking a pass rusher tonight.
Right. You can't do your fantasy draft in computer mode where it just takes the highest player available regardless. Like you might draft 9 wide receivers in a row because that was the best position. No, that's not how the NFL draft works. And I love it, man. Howie Roseman said he was one of their Red Star prospects, which they only assign about 10 or 11 of those guys throughout multiple rounds that are character guys, that are leaders, that are healthy, that fit what the Eagles are. Those are those ones that the scouts will really pound the table for. So it seems like it was an easy selection for the Philadelphia Eagles, a necessary selection, and one I've been waiting for a couple years, man. Like, it feels good. I was sitting there
Yes, you
and
have.
I got home from the lacrosse game that I coached, and I'm saying, oh, this is the board here. Like, I'll take Jordan Battle. I'll take a Sidney Brown, and they got one, man. Like, they finally did. And you see the Tyler Steen pick first. That's perfect. Howie Roseman played that up great. Like, let's get our linemen, and then let's give the people what they want. Give them the safety. I think he'll be a loved guy in that Eagles backfield, and fans are going to love his style of play, man. He's a maniac. Like, go watch his tape. The dude just flies around all over the field.
What are Steen and Brown's roles for 2023? That's coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. And guys, today's show is sponsored by Ultimate Pro Football GM. You've heard us talk about this mobile game app for a few months. It's been so much fun to play the role of a general manager. If you think you can do it, you got to give this game a try. It's not as easy as you might think to create a dynasty. When you play Ultimate Football GM, you get to control every aspect of your team as you play through seasons and lead your team to glory. With Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, managing all the finances, including negotiating player salaries and terms, navigating your franchise through free agency, the draft, injuries, player personnel issues, all the ups and downs of a season, all in this challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline as well. Play on the go as you want to, whenever you want. Locked On Eagles listeners, you get a 100% free boost to your franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON in all capital letters in the game store. That's Locked On, so make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, Eagles fans, we are continuing on this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, recapping day 2 of the 2023 NFL Draft. The second and third round are now in the books. The Philadelphia Eagles trading down from pick 62 to 65, collecting an extra 6 and 7 tomorrow. They had the pick in the third round of 65 and 66 back-to-back, Gino, taking Alabama offensive lineman Tyler Steen, and then Illinois safety Sidney Brown. It was cool, too, Trent Cole doing the announcements. I think that's the first time as an Eagles fan I've ever had the pleasure of listening to like back-to-back picks where they go to the podium and they say they're selecting Tyler Steen and Sidney Brown, where you didn't know what 2 picks were coming. That was fun.
Yeah, I didn't know if they were going to trade out of the second one, but then all of a sudden the PA announcer said to announce the Philadelphia Eagles selections, not selection.
Yeah, that was like a double announcement at the same time. I've never seen that before for the Birds.
Yeah, the closest thing we had was JJ and Miles when they were a pick apart from each other, and Mecole Hardman was right between them. And
that's the closest,
man,
yes.
It was cool to see Trent Cole, and it really makes me feel old because that's like one of those guys that you see him come into the league, right? You watch his whole career, you see him usher in the younger guys, and like he's ushering in Brandon Graham, and now Brandon Graham is going to be that guy. It's like the Splinter and Ninja Turtles meme where they're ushering out the old guard, and it was awesome to see him. And see him make that announcement, just coming out there guns a-blazing with the EAGLES Eagles and just blowing all of the steam that he had. You heard him huffing and puffing to make the announcement. And you get Tyler Steen, you get Sidney Brown. There's a long way until the next pick, but we came into this saying, Lou, let's get the quality guys. You got 2 edge rushers, one on the interior, one on the exterior, a swing guard and tackle coming from Alabama, and potentially your safety that can do all of it. Everything that you need on defense, be the quarterback. You came into this with a bunch of needs, I would say, on the defensive side of the ball. Edge might not have been the most important need. Defensive tackle might not have been, but for the long term, that's what's really set.
That's what they do, Gino. This was the most Eagles' first 3 rounds of all time. They take the meat and potatoes, they go linemen. That's what they did with their first 3 picks. They now, since 2021, take Georgia and Alabama players, right?
Yep.
Devontae Smith, Landon Dickerson, Tyler Steen, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Nolan Smith. Who else am I missing? Jalen Carter. So you continue those trends.
Like the biggest name.
Yeah, the biggest one. And then you take a safety, which again was really big. And I think the Eagles really wanted to get one of those top 5 prospects. When you look at Brian Branch, I would say it's Branch, Antonio Johnson, Sidney Brown, Jordan Battle, and then maybe Jair Brown from Penn State, right? After that, even Daniel Jeremiah said it.
Location.
Yeah, the Niners traded up for Brown, which is a nice move. But after those 5 prospects, I think there's a pretty substantial drop-off at this position. It's definitely not a deep class this year compared to past years. Like last year, you look at 2019, the draft CGJ was in. So I'm really glad. Again, I had a few preferences when it comes to these prospects at safety, but I'm just glad they got one of those top-tier players because, again, there's a big drop-off, and I like Blankenship a lot, but I really thought they needed to get in another guy to make sure Blankenship's not an every down player. I don't know. Edmonds and Blankenship probably would have been fine this year, but I think Sidney Brown's going to be an upgrade.
And the thing with Sidney Brown that I talked a lot about on when we went into these mock draft Mondays and talked about what we really need in the defensive secondary. The good thing about Brown is that you can get him on the field right away in sub packages, right? Like this is a guy who's smart. He's versatile. You can move him all over the field. And there's an instant need, man. Like, yes, you do bring in Terrell Edmonds. Yes, you do have Reed Blankenship. But are those guys single high, deep safeties?
No, they're not the athletes of Brown or CGJ last year, the coverage type of players. You know, like when Maddox went down and suddenly CGJ is playing in the slot again. That's not Edmonds and Blankenship.
No, not at all. And the thing about Brown is I still think that potential is untapped to where you can match him up. Yeah, you're not going to match him up with tight ends like a guy like CGJ might do because he doesn't have that frame, that build. But he's a guy who's quick. He's athletic. You want to use him on slot matchups on the inside and show different types of coverages that Sean Desai is just going to continue to have all the versatility in the world with his front and his back end now. And what they've done between free agency and the draft, Lou, I think they've brought in and had those Band-Aid type of signings, but they're not just Band-Aids. Like Terrell Edmonds is still young. Like he could still be a guy for you if he does have a role. And now Sidney Brown's cost controlled for 4 years. Reed Blankenship still has 3 years on his undrafted free agency deal. Justin Evans is a young upcoming safety. If he doesn't have health concerns, you might have made out all right. So maybe we overreact at safety every single year, and the same thing happens, that when they get onto the field, that they get good results. And it's not the Malcolm Jenkins, the Rodney McLeods, or even the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, but it's like the running back room, where it's going to be a committee type of approach. There's not going to be that guy that plays 100% of the snaps, let's say. You'll probably get a good rotation between all of them. And rightfully
But Gino, if you had to predict one to be that guy, I might say Sidney Brown.
Sidney Brown. Yeah, I would 100% agree because you can play him really everywhere. And like if you're going to a Sean Desai cover 3 type of look that Seattle love to run, yeah, he's going to be that single high guy. I don't want Reed Blankenship playing single high. Like I don't want.
No, that's and that was my point. Right, exactly. And Gino, he was last year when I went to the Senior Bowl, Tariq Woolen was the player that I went in not knowing who he was. And then after the Senior Bowl, I said, I got to watch this guy. That was Sidney Brown for me this year. And even Howie Roseman said during that press conference that they got to see Brown do things in those drills down in Mobile that they didn't see on tape, which made them really like him even more. They got to see the athleticism up close and personal, the coverage ability, just that kind of motor and range that he has. And so that was an important part of this process. And so I'm excited about that pick a lot. And yeah, I think he has a really good opportunity to maybe have one of the biggest roles of this rookie class when it comes to the immediate future of 2023. Before we take a break, Gino, when it comes to Tyler Steen, Nick Sirianni said it himself, like the best man's going to win that job at right guard. So Steen, again, can be your swing tackle. He could potentially start at right guard, but this isn't like if you took Osiris Torrance or if you would have drafted an offensive lineman in the first round, like Cody Mock, let's say, who went to Tampa Bay, I believe. The Buccaneers. Yep. Those guys, I would have said, okay, they're starting, and then Cam Jurgens, you focus on one more year of being a backup center, then you take over for Jason Kelsey. With Steen, now they can be like, let Jurgens and Steen battle it out in camp. I think it really is may the best man win at that spot, and then both of them are more long-term players at center and tackle.
And about what you just said right there, you have a guy who you drafted as a center who you believe can play guard. You got a guy who played primarily tackle that can play guard.
I love the versatility.
Right in their wheelhouse. That's what they're going to do. That's why it's like, yeah, the idea of adding Osiris would be awesome. But when's the last time they just took a true guard? Like it's been so long. I mean, even Landon Dickerson.
Even Sayamalu was a center at Oregon State. And like you said, Dickerson was a center at Bama.
Yeah. Yeah, and he played all over at Florida State as well, and they need guys that can do that. And Jordan Mailata is probably the only one that's been that type of guy, right? And but you could probably play him at guard if you had
Well, because you had to
and
teach him the sport, so you wanted to focus on one position.
But the good thing about Tyler Steen is that he knows all type of coverages, all type of defensive fronts that he has gone against in the SEC. And he's a smart player, and he's somebody who can pick up on things. You talk about only allowing 2 sacks. I mean, think about how hard that is, like with all the twists and stunts of all these athletic guys
and in
that
the
you have
SEC.
to pass off in the SEC. And you
playing
got
teams like Georgia.
Yep, you got to be on the same page with your tackle and your center to be that type of player. Good on him, man. 500 pass. I think it was 500 pass sets, and he allowed 2 sacks. That's like, I mean, that's not Lane Johnson type of good, but that's like a Landon Dickerson type of good, right? And if he could be a Landon Dickerson type of good, you might have just had a great steal of a pick there, Lou. And we might be talking about him being a bigger part of this organizational pillar than Sidney Brown in a couple years. I mean, you don't know the way that the offensive line is going to go. It could look Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, Tyler Steen, maybe Lane Johnson or his replacement inevitably. So I think the Eagles, man, like you got 4 guys who are going to be impact players, not just now, but in the future at positions of need. And were arguably the best player on the board at that position at the time. Like these guys were neither reaches. I don't think they were reaches. You might have had a preference over another guy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think they are crushing this draft. Overall grades from the first 3 rounds coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
Before we do that, this episode of LOE is brought to you by our friends over at Built Bar. If you haven't tried Built Bar yet, you got to go to Built.com and check it out. And what is Built Bar? Well, if you haven't heard about it, our everydayers, of course, have heard about it for years. But those new to the show, it is not just the most delicious, but the most nutritious protein bar on the market. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 17 grams of protein. I eat one every day before I go to the gym. And when I have those late night sweet cravings, because they have churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. I got a wedding to get ready for. I've been losing weight by just taking these Built Bars, and instead of having one of those big name brand chocolates, I just have one of these delicious 100% covered in dark chocolate bars. And you could get them over at Built.com, or if you're out in your car, you're driving down the street, you have a Sam's Club membership, you can grab a 13-bar box, or if you just want to go into a Walmart, you could pick up the 4-bar box. But make sure you go check out Built Bar. You won't regret it. The best protein bar on the market.
All right, Eagles fans, we are wrapping up this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, recapping day 2 of the 2023 NFL Draft. The Eagles moving down from the second round to the third, taking Tyler Steen from Alabama on the offensive line, and then back-to-back picks. Right after that, they go with Sidney Brown, the Illinois safety. Both, I think, have a potential role of being full-time starters next year, which is honestly, I think you can say that for Steen and Brown, even maybe more than Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith.
Yeah, for the now, right? And Fletcher Cox is going to be an immediate starter, and you'd have to think that Milton Williams will probably be the favorite to take a lot
Jordan
of those reps.
Davis.
And without Ndamukong Suh, without Linval Joseph as well, they will get in the rotation. But if you're talking about a guy who can just go out there and win a job, I mean, Reed Blankenship was your starter in the Super Bowl. How easy would it be to turn over that position in a year? Where would Sidney Brown and Terrell Edmonds being your starters be a shocker for you day one? To me, no.
No, not at all. Gino, I think my overall grade so far for this draft, when you look at these 4 selections, I think we're at an A right now. I mean, maybe even an A+. I mean, they got everything that I wanted. An elite pass rushing defensive tackle, a blue chip prospect in Jalen Carter that I didn't think was going to be available. You get him by only giving up a 4th round pick next year. You get Nolan Smith at 30, an explosive edge rusher that I would have been okay taking at 10 at 30. And then you get the swing offensive lineman that can fill many roles for the short term in the future, and you get the athlete at safety. That's what I wanted. I wanted a pass rusher, I wanted a versatile offensive lineman, and I wanted a DB prospect in the first 3 rounds, and they literally gave me everything I wanted on my wish list. Was it the exact prospects I wanted in the exact order? No, but I'm not going to be picky about it. I am extremely happy with these 2 days. I think the Eagles absolutely crushed it.
It was always quality over quantity. And not only that, Lou, you have to give them an A, not for just what they did, but they also accumulated 2 other picks by not giving up a large chunk of dropping down in the draft order. You move down 3 spots. You acquire 2 more selections tomorrow. Howie Roseman even said it. They want more swings. They want more chances at guys. And you walk away with this draft being 8 total selections after the 4 that you had today. And we could get into some of those fun positions tomorrow. It's still a deep group at wide receiver when it comes to depth, at running back as well, and tight
end got picked clean though tonight, Gino. Man.
It did. There is depth though at all of those positions, and now it's really going to be what is the icing on the cake. And the San Francisco 49ers just picked a kicker at pick 99. So hey, if the Eagles pick a punter tomorrow, I won't be too shocked about it. That would be pretty
Gino,
awesome,
they need
in
it.
my opinion.
Maybe tomorrow's about focusing on your special teams unit, huh?
Yeah, I totally agree on that, man. And you're going to be looking at guys that could potentially be your 4th or 5th linebacker, maybe even another defensive back. You could add to that wide receiver room, which is always turning over outside of Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown at this point. You really don't know what the number 3, 4, 5 combination is going to be. Heck, even add another running back to that room. And then the undrafted free agent portion is going to be very fun. The Eagles should shell out some big money when it comes to those guys. They love to do that. They did that with Carson Strong last year. Let's hope at least this guy makes the practice squad to the one guy that they give the most money to in the undrafted free agent pool.
We'll see what they do rounds 4 through 7 tomorrow, the start of day 3. The 2023 NFL Draft rolls on. We got you covered right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast all throughout the week, Monday through Friday. Shout out to the everydayers listening in on all podcast platforms and watching on YouTube as well. The Philadelphia Eagles select Alabama offensive lineman Tyler Steen and Illinois safety Sidney Brown on day 2. What'd you think of the picks? Hit us up on Twitter at LockedOnBirds, at GC24_football, and at DiBiase LOE. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. As always, thank you for downloading, thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.